very good evening to you. Many thanks for joining us on your favorite program, Family Matters, that comes your way every Sunday right here at KBC Channel 1. My name is Purity Museo and I'm holding brief for Edward Kabasa. Tonight we have a very interesting conversation on parenting on this digital era. We will be having a look at some of the parenting styles that could act as a risk or even supportive ways when it comes to taking care of your kids. What some of the conversations that parents should be having with their kids. That is what we are discussing tonight, and we have a special guest tonight who will be helping us with that conversation. But just before that, the world has monumentally evolved into a completely different era of increased use of interconnected digital technology. Undeniably, the platform has been transformative in many ways, but this evolution has not been all rosy, as millions of social network users have had to endure with cyberbullying, which is an increasing negative phenomenon in the digital world. And our reporter Jackie Wambiru explores the dark side of the 21st century milestone that is the interactive multimedia space. Take a look.
The worrying trend of cyberbullying has been on the rise all over the world, and Kenya has not been spared by the hounds of hate. A good number of unsuspecting Kenyans are being caught up in this untidy situation, and in their own words, the experience can be as dreadful as a gathering storm. Brian Kasaine was going about his daily life before his phone was jammed by incessant calls from concerned relatives and friends. A blog had published his photo alongside a story of the arrest of a suspect in a murder case.
I went to WhatsApp and found the screenshots of the headline, Brian Kasaine is arrested with guns. So for me at first I laughed. I remember sharing it with my roommate and I laughed. I knew it wasn't something serious. After all, there are so many people that share names.
This was a case of mistaken identity. Brian, who makes a living as a writer and a motivational speaker, recalls how an innocent photo turned into a toxic case of cyberbullying.
Now, after they published using my image, it's like they had now directed the entire world towards this suspect.
Brian's surname is spelled with a single S, contrary to that of his namesake, a suspect in a murder case whose name has a double S.
When I was posting to try and tell these people that they have the wrong Brian, so I did not understand where those allegations were coming from. And that is when I started breaking down emotionally, psychologically, and all that.
Eager to have the ensuing confusion evaporate, things took a turn for the worst, from a published photo to abusive posts on different social networking sites.
I remember one particular one that really hit kabisa. It was this guy who took my image and said this young writer is masquerading as a writer, but he's a criminal.
Brian is not the only victim.
Then when I released that song, I put it up on YouTube in the evening, and then in the morning, 6 a.m., a journalist called me. You're trending on Twitter, #1. So I went on Twitter, and when I was crawling through the TL, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Like there was so much insult and negative comments around the song. And for a moment, I went in a trance. I thought I was dreaming or something.
James Mutheramu, alias Jamie Gate, has been subjected to constant public ridicule. As a popular music artist, he says online bullies have had a go at him on numerous occasions.
Again, I released another song called Yes Undia Sponsor, and again, I was really bullied. And people started doing memes around Jimmy Gate. So anything that would happen, even up to date, lazima niingiliwe. Jimmy Gate anatoa wimbo, mbinguni hakuna whatever.
Brian and Jimmy highlight the gravity of cyberbullying on their personal lives.
So that really affected me. I locked myself in the house for 2 weeks and I couldn't get out. I felt like the whole world was against me.
That is when I was getting weaker and feeling like crying. I actually began understanding why some people turn to things like committing suicide. because you feel the world is against you. Despite all the things you've done for the world, this is how they repay you.
Harrowing tales of victims of cyberbullying, a vice that has left behind victims grappling with psychological trauma even as perpetrators walk free, some oblivious of the actions on one's life. Yet different people face different types of cyberbullying and discrimination online.
Apart from the physical bullying, there's even social bullying, where people can even isolate you in a social situation. Or somebody even who gossips about you, tells false information about you to other people so that they can see you negatively. That's also social bullying. And now we come now to the newest form of bullying, which is cyberbullying.
According to clinical psychologist Catherine Amulundu, there are underlying issues in the lying of persons who yearn for an opportunity to bully others.
They are obsessed about themselves and how to get attention from other people. Such people from their upbringing, they also develop low self-esteem. So they don't feel very confident about themselves. And the only way they can make themselves feel better is by seeking attention from other people.
Yet the government's hands appears tied, given that a large percentage of the platforms prone to abuse are foreign-based.
So yes, it's been hard as a national point of contact on cybersecurity issues. Once we establish that trust with the global community, then it becomes very easy to now start engaging and putting together partnerships that will help resolve such cross-border issues.
As a deterrent measure, Communications Authority of Kenya Assistant Director of Cybersecurity and E-Commerce, Vincent Gundi, urges individuals who encounter bullies online to report the matter to authorities for follow-up.
To be able to successfully prosecute, it's very important that we report on time, on one hand, so that now the police can be assisted to collect the relevant evidence.
Nobody is talking, they don't get caught, they continue to perpetrate their trade for the longest time. So we need to speak out.
Parents and guardians are also advised to be on the lookout as their children can be targets of cyberbullies.
Many children look at technology as a fun thing to have, but they also need to be told that whereas there are very good things about technology, there are also certain things that you need to be cautious of.
If they tell you somebody is sending them messages which are making them uncomfortable, be on their side. So be supportive.
Reporting for Channel 1 News, I'm Jackie Wambiru.
And we'll be talking more about that cyberbullying on our conversation tonight. Parenting in this digital era. How should parents protect their children when it comes to matters cyberbullying? What sort of conversations should parents be having with their kids? Feel free to take part in this conversation. We have a team of experts who will be helping us out in the matters parenting at Purity_Museo at KBC Channel 1 News. The hashtag is Family Matters tonight. I'm standing in for Edward Kabasa, and now help me welcome a special guest tonight. Next to me is Carol Chakwa, who is a psychotherapist and a lead parenting coach at Being Parenting. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for making time for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Purity.
Yes, and next to Carol is Evelyn Kasina, founder and lead IT consultant at Evminet Communication Solutions Limited. Carol, Evelyn, sorry, welcome to the show and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you and happy holidays.
Yes, happy holiday. This is the time we should also be having this conversation on parenting. Where do we begin? You are a parenting coach. Maybe when we talk about parenting, what exactly should come to our mind? What should we think about parenting? It's a process. What exactly is parenting?
You know, parenting ends with an ing. That means there's a continuous aspect to it. And for me, I think it's just the process of creating the right environment. And this means by any adult, not necessarily a biological or an adoptive parent, just creating the right environment for children to thrive. And in the process of them thriving, then we are nurturing in them internal guidance or internal mechanisms so that now when they can go and be on their own, those internal mechanisms are already there and they are able to live without the parent in a very significant way. So for me, it's just really creating the right environment for children to thrive so that they are able to be independent as they grow.
Right, and Evelyn, you deal with kids. What should this right environment be like? You know, when you talk about right environment, maybe right environment for me can be different with another kid.
Yeah.
So when you talk about right environment for this child to thrive, what sort of environment are we talking about?
In a sense, a stable environment, because every child needs to be in an environment where there are stable adults who are giving a stable environment where they can thrive and be nurtured to be independent and responsible human beings. And different homes are skewed differently. There are people who are exposed more to technology than others by virtue of just, you know, their environment and their exposure. So by and large, it's just being in a stable environment.
Stable environment.
Yeah.
You still deal with kids,
Yeah.
and let's now talk about parenting, because she's talking about creating a conducive environment for these kids to thrive. But then at the digital era, is it the same? Do we have the same explanation to when it comes to creating? Because we'll be talking about social media, cyberbullying, and all that. When we talk about parenting in this digital era, is there anything unique or special about it?
The platforms that are available for parents who are raising children in this particular era, there's just a plethora of social media platforms, you know, gadgets. So information is really at our fingertips. It's very much accessible. And as opposed to how we grew up with singular channels with timed programs, right now we have channels that are dedicated for certain programs. So you find that our children, first and foremost, are exposed to so much content that is so confusing that you find people can't stick to one channel for like 10 minutes unless they're watching a movie, and it has to be very interesting because they have to keep flipping. So what is here, what is there, what is here, what is there? And that information is really too much for someone to consume within a day. So the one most unique thing for me, I'd say, is the content and the fact that we have so many platforms at our disposal.
Yeah, and you will be telling us some of the factors that influence the decision making when it comes to allowing your kids to assess content and what content are we talking about. But Carol, as a parenting coach, some parents are permissive. They will allow their kids to do what they want to do because they want them to be independent. Others are authoritarians. Others are authoritative. You know, there's no responsiveness for authoritarians. Do we have different categories for parenting? Is there an ideal way of doing it? Or is there a guideline of what should be parents be looking out for?
I think every parent as an individual is different. And I know that there are styles of parenting that have been put forth out there, authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, I think there's an involved, there are so many. And those ones, actually, we can think of them about maybe 10 years ago. Now we have new ways of looking at parents. We have parents who are being called helicopter parents, you know, the ones who are just hovering over their children. Then we have the lawnmower parents. You know, the lawnmower, they clear everything so that when the children come, they don't get any bumps in the way. But for me, it's not so much describing the parents, but it's so much asking why is the parent even feeling compelled to do that? Why is the parent feeling like they have to be overly strict? Okay, I do work with parents and I see those extremes. I sit down with a parent and they're like, my parents actually just let me do whatever I wanted, and I think that's why I'm struggling. So I'm going to change my parenting style, and my kids are going to have a strict structure, a strict regimen. So these are parents who is carrying their issues from the past into now the decisions they're making with their parents, with their children. And then we have the other extreme, the ones who, the parents were so strict and used quite, you know, military way of you know, raising them. And because of their the experiences of trauma they've gone through, now as they come into the space of their parenting, they may find themselves being overly permissive, because they do not want their children to go through what it is they went through. So, so there are different ways of parenting. I think for me it's more important is what's driving you. You know, it's not so much what are you doing, but what is driving you? Why are you in that space? And I really take parents through the process of even exploring their past and figuring out, could there be possibilities that I even experienced trauma? And sometimes even we don't even know that you have trauma. It's just that when a child when now you get a child into your space, it just triggers something in you. So you can become overreactive to a child, either being overly harsh or overly permissive.
Right.
Yeah.
And Evelyn, there are so many vices in the society that are blamed on the parents. Yeah. I'll ask you two questions. Should we be blaming parents for anything that their kids do? And number two, what are some of the vices, the things that parents do that may negatively affect the future of the children?
Well, the first question is yes and no. The yes, we can blame parents because we are not taking into account how soon we are handing over gadgets without the conversation of what is the responsibility behind this gadget that I'm giving you. So I give you a gadget, I'm to blame because if I'm not going to have this decent conversation of this is the responsibility, you're going to do A, B, C, D. If I'm not going to take my child through the fact that they can screen content, and should they, by mistake, find something that is unhealthy, do they know what unhealthy content is? So do I first report to an adult who's around me, or do I stop watching, or do I continue watching? Because children in their nature, they're very curious. They just want, you know, when the minute you say you can't do this, that is exactly what they'll do. But no, in the sense that you can do your best as a parent. You can give your children the best that there is, and they will turn out to be the opposite of what you desire for them. That is not your fault. Parents need to be able to understand that they're independent from their children. Their children have their own lives. They also have choice. So you can tell a child to eat the broccoli, they eat the broccoli, they eat the broccoli, and at some point they'll be like, I'm done with the broccoli, yeah? Because they have the choice to say yes to this and no to this. So it's just a balance where if, for instance, you're going to decide we are going to have certain technology, let's have a discussion around it so that you're not always saying, I wish I knew. Have that doubt out of the way. But then again, I think there's so much pressure for the parent nowadays to conform to what society has for them. We have a lot of pressure to make our children, when they're going to certain circles, they have to be the ones who know what is trending. So you don't want your child to feel left out because they don't know the new PS4 game that is out there. Probably you're not in a position to actually comply and get them that. So there's so much pressure.
Right.
Yeah.
And Carol, to just add on what Evelyn is saying, what is happening in our society? People are saying bad parenting, you know, I'm going to parent my child like the way my mom did 1, 2, 3, and 4. So should we be blaming parents for what is happening? For example, we have increased cases of teenage pregnancy. That's for fact. We have increased cases of drug use and abuse. That's for fact. What is leading to all this? Is it the social media, the technology? Because we never used to see this, let's say, long time ago. Is it bad parenting? Is it what kids are being exposed to? Or what has brought all this?
I wish I had one answer,
Yes.
like saying it's this and let's stick to it. But you know what? It's a systemic problem. The problem is with the system. And when there's a problem with the system, then we have, what do we call it? Byproducts or casualties, you know, because the system has an issue. If my body, a part of an organ in my body is not working well, it might show up in a completely different place that may not necessarily have a direct, you know, bearing from the organ until an expert comes and actually decides to tear it apart and figure out what's really going on. So I do not have an answer as to who is to blame. I know that as a society, we have experienced quite a bit. I mean, from a psychological perspective, I'll talk about the traumas that people have experienced over time, whether they were children, whether it's watching too much going on TV or post-election violence, whatever it is. What happens is we go through that and we bury it in, and because we do not know how, we don't have the tools and the resources to deal with it, it comes out in different ways. You might end up having you might find your solace in a relationship, and probably that's how pregnancy comes up. When I think about teenage pregnancy, I feel like there's a lot more going on with children than just saying the parents are not doing their job. Evelyn has said partly to blame, yes, and partly not to blame, because there's really no one way of pinning, you know, and saying this is the issue. If I was just to speak specifically on the teenage, I know one of the reasons that teenage girls get into early sexual behavior is really a lack of low self-esteem, a lack of a sense of purpose. And if they're exposed to mentors and to spaces where they can begin to find their direction early in life, then they are less likely to engage in early sexual behavior.
And you will be coaching us as a parenting coach if there is a way to go about it. Mm-hmm. But just before that, Evelyn, let me ask you, when we talk about parenting, of course, we have different stages in life. We have a small baby, an adolescent, adult. You know, what motivates the decision that a parent should take when it comes to, you know, at this age I'm going to treat you like this, and then at this age I think I need to change the way or my way of speaking with you or even interacting with you. What are some of the signs, or what should parents consider when it comes to parenting, considering that we have different stages, you know, of growth for a person?
Let me start by first just shortly or briefly advising on like the different types of screen time, because that also is a factor to decision making. You've realized right now, as soon as parents are breastfeeding, this is how we are, breastfeeding and on our phones, literally. As young as the child is like below 1 year. The recommended screen time for a child who's between 0 and 2 is actually 0 screen time. They should not have screen time at all. Because the youngest child who got addicted to screens was actually 2 years, and they had to go to rehab. So imagine your 2-year-old going to rehab because they're addicted to a screen. Between 2 and 4, it should be 30 minutes per day. That should be supervised screen time. Do we follow it? 30 minutes looks like, I mean, you've just blinked
time.
barely.
Yeah.
And, you know, between 7 and 9, it should be like an hour. By the time your child is at 7 years, you need to be able to start defining how much time am I going to set aside for entertainment, then how much time am I going to set aside to learn. The thing about children, and the thing I think parents need to start considering when they're making such decisions, is make learning a bit fun for children. Don't make it very standard the way we learned, teacher in front of us, it's ABCD, we have to learn like that, the way we used to learn before. Make learning a bit fun, so that when you're telling your child, I'm going to give you 1 hour of watching your Ben 10, but you need to give me 1 hour of learning. Learning doesn't necessarily mean we have to do mathematics or English. Let them learn how to create slime. That's a scientist right there who is trying to mix stuff up to create something. That's learning, using technology for learning. When you're making decisions, different families have different reasons why they start introducing technology early. You might find that a parent who really travels a lot, so the reason why they're giving certain gadgets to their children, it's basically for communication. Now the problem becomes, how many hours do you communicate with your child? Then what else do they do when you're not communicating with them? So hence the conversation of responsibility behind the technology. Different people have different reasons why they introduce technology to their children. We are also in a space in our society where we want to keep up with the trends. I have a very nice functional TV, but there's the new smart TV, which is barely just 30,000 shillings, so why don't I upgrade? Then you start having all these gadgets. Then you realize even within a family setup, everybody, even during mealtime, everybody's on a gadget. You go to the toilet, you have your phone. You go to the bedroom, you have your phone. People are literally not even having this one-to-one conversation. Just take a random day like a Sunday between 12 and 3, when people are doing their brunch, their lunches. Just take a glance at how people are interacting. Everybody's literally on their phone as the children are busy jumping in a bouncing castle. Then when you ask a parent, how much time are you interacting with your child? They'll say, I was with my child all afternoon, but they were there jumping and you were here. Your husband was on the, you know, catching up with news on the newspaper. You're barely interacting. She said something interesting some time back. Are you hanging out with your child or are you connecting with your child? That is something that parents need to start knowing. Is technology hindering you from connecting with your children? Or are you just saying, I'm one of those parents who just hangs out with my child because they're here, I can see them, but I'm engaging with my technology, they're doing their own thing. So even when you're making decisions, I think it comes from a value set. We need to start defining our value systems. We need to be able to start putting up structures within the ecosystem of the child. We need to start knowing who is accessible to my child. The parent, the guardian, that is the primary role, the primary influence to your child. We forget our nannies most of the time. They have smartphones. So if I'm not able to tell my nanny, my children cannot access anybody's phone. When you go, you've told your child, you can't be on TV, the TV is off, but they can ask the nanny for their phone. And they will have access to technology because you've forgotten that fundamental person who is at home with your child most of the time. The education centers where our children go to school, that is the second most influential role to your child. Then now there's the virtual community. Our children nowadays are hardly going outside. They are connecting virtually. They're playing Fortnite, so we know each other, but we are all in a virtual space. Do you know the kind of people who have access to your child? By the time they're getting on the internet, they're not in Kenya, they're on a global platform. So they will interact with people from all walks of life. They will start having intercultural differences. They will start intermingling with different people who have different beliefs. And that becomes also a very tricky place because as a parent, where do you step in? If children as early as, I'll give an example of 6 years, are able to start discussing the issue of LGBT because in certain continents, that is an issue. Hollywood is pushing that agenda, and I have not taken the responsibility to talk to my children about this sexuality because I'm thinking I'm an African and that's frowned upon and I'm not going to have this discussion. You are male, you're female, that's it.
So, Carol, what sort of conversation, as much as, let's say you introduce your child to the gadget at the age of 13, this is still a teenage, they are exposed to a lot of things. Most of the time, let's assume you're not even there with them. What sort of preparations, you know, do you sit them down before you give them this gadget? Put across rules, say, you know, you're not supposed to visit these sites, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just tell us, how do you help your child? Because at the end of the day, you will give them the gadget. Yeah. Yes, we are in that era.
Yeah, yes. And we cannot avoid it. I think that first, yeah, it's good if you're giving them at 13, you know, you're in a place where you can negotiate. First of all, for me, children need to know, your child needs to know that this is a privilege. It is not a right, okay? It's very important. Once that is clear, then it becomes very easy to enforce the consequences that are there because you're always going back to, this is a privilege, by the way, okay? And this is the reason you have this phone, and 1, 2, 3. And then you can come up with a contract and say, these are the times I'm going to use. And the contract, you negotiate between the two of you. You say, first of all, basic, it's a privilege, but let's have a contract. These are the times to use it, and these are the very clear consequences. Why? If you do this, then these are the consequences that you will face. And the child signs, and you sign. And it just becomes, you know, it's a collaborative space. Apart from having a contract, one of the things that we need to understand even as parents is that the way our children are interacting with technology is very different from the way we interacted with technology. And there's a lot of brain science that talks about how that helps us understand how difficult it is for a child to get off the screen once they are on it. I think that information should be available to parents, and I think parents should also communicate that information to children. Let me give you just a very clear example. A 14-year-old girl will post something on Instagram, okay? They will get 10 likes. And then immediately they will discover that their friend posted and they got 100 likes. So that already does something to how they feel about themselves. Do you know, those are the discussions we need to have with our children. How does it feel when your friend gets 100 likes and you don't get? And we now, that way, yeah, tell me, how does it feel? And you know, you're not 13, but there's a way you feel. Yeah. I mean, this is just like people don't like me anymore or whatever, but it does something. Yeah, yeah. You know, having those conversations, they're important because you're helping a child know, well, this mom is actually understanding me, or dad is actually understanding where I'm coming from. So what you're doing is telling them, I empathize with you, I empathize with this need. But then there are many other ways that we can be able to engage and communicate with people so that we don't necessarily need approval from 100 people. So the conversations should be more than just saying technology, gadgets are not good for you, this is a waste of time, to what is going on with me as I'm interacting. And just empathize that it's actually hard. It's actually hard to get off. With boys, it's even harder because if they're playing Fortnite, okay, they are so revved up. You coming and just grabbing that screen for whatever device it is they're using from them, you have left them hanging when all the energy was like very, very high. And it's likely that they will look for other ways of letting off that energy, and that will probably be in aggressive ways. So just helping, I mean, I have conversations with my son about how revved up he gets, and therefore we need to give him, he needs to pace himself so that we have a 20-minute timer, okay? So that now he knows he has 10 minutes left. When in his mind he connects to the fact that he has 10 minutes left, then he knows he doesn't need to get to the next level. What he needs to do is start going down. So conversations should be more than just saying no or coming up with a contract. Conversations should also be about, hey, it's hard, eh? This thing is hard to get off, eh? You know, they feel like, yeah, you're really understanding
Remember,
them.
there's the issue of children's right. I don't know why I feel like tonight we have some limited time because my director tells me we have less than 5 minutes. Can you believe it? But Evelyn, let's talk about kids. Should parents give up on their kids? Because some will be like, honestly, with this one, I give up. They're beyond control. They're beyond repair. Do we have such a point?
It can get there, but I would say you can't give up. Not on your children. You can give up on so many other things, but not your children. Because you only raise your children once. If you miss it, you've missed it. But then, if you've missed it, there's always, I don't know if there's catching up or there is making up for lost time. Because there's no manual that actually says you need to raise your child A, B, C, D, and this is the output. No, no, no. You learn as you go. And for those people who actually feel lost, we have a program that will help the children just navigate that space, because it's not just about, you know, taking care of that space. It's about how do you harness technology, because we also need to tell children there's entertainment, that is everything else you can do with it. There is so much you can do with technology. So
maybe, Carol, you can now get your coaching skills in place and help parents out there. You know, what I know parents come to you especially with such problems. My kid did 1, 2, 3, and 4. I can't believe it. That's not what I've taught them. But they are doing this because of peer pressure, because of technology. We have it here. What advice would you give to such a parent who is watching and they feel like my child is giving me headache, honestly? Yeah,
one, there's no quick fix. And I think I really want to address that question again on can a parent give up on a child? One, there's no quick fix. And if we approach parenting as fixing it quickly, we will get really frustrated and we will always be in that space of, looking for Carol to help you. But if you look at parenting as the way a farmer just tends to his crops and looks at it as a process and knows that it is messy. So parenting is messy, and it's okay for those things to happen because our children are human, okay? So I would say it's never too late, even at whatever age. I mean, at my age, I'm still not learning new things. So if my children are under my influence, there is no like a window of opportunity where now if that window is closed, it's too late. There's always an opportunity for you to influence your children, as long as you're not focusing on a quick fix, but you're focusing on creating a nurturing environment at whatever age your child is still responsive to you. By the way, the brain fully matures at 25. So how he's starting to say that it's too late at 13. You know,
13.
yeah, we have
Right.
many opportunities to influence children.
All right.
Yeah.
And for more questions and for parents who want to contact you and they need help from you, maybe you could just have a look at the camera and tell them.
Yes.
They contact you.
Yes, we are. I'm the founder of Being Parenting. So the parenting program is called Being, B-E-I-N-G, Parenting. We are on Facebook as Being Parenting, Instagram as Being Parenting, and then you can also find us at www.beingparenting.com. We're also on Twitter at Being Parenting. So you'll find us on all social media platforms.
Evelyn, how do we get you?
And for the parents who really want their children to harness technology, you can find us at Eve Minute. Our website is eveminute.co.ke. We are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube as Eve Minute Communication.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I can also link you up with them
Yeah.
at Purity_Museo on Twitter and Facebook, Purity Museo. Evelyn Kasina, the founder and lead IT consultant at the Eve Minute Communication Solutions. Thank you so much for your time. I feel there's a lot we need to talk about parenting. I'm hoping we'll have you two back, you know, to answer directly questions from our viewers. And also Dr. Carol Chakwa, psychotherapist and lead parenting coach at Being Parenting. It has been a great time having you here tonight.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Purity.
ladies.
It was a pleasure.
Yes, and thank you all for watching. That's all the time we had for Family Matters tonight. Keep interacting with us. I will be forwarding and looking at your feedback. Just even as we wind up, I will be looking at your feedback. Any question I will be forwarding to our guest tonight. My name is Purity Museo. Do have yourself a lovely night and happy holidays.